Hello, folks. Welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and we have another great show planned for us tonight. But first, while we wait for people to gather in the chat, let me go off and show some artwork off from my own upcoming graphic novel, Scumdogs. Just a moment, folks. People to gather in the chat. There. Just want to get that done, make sure I'm streaming. There. Here is my extreme 90s cover. This cover I did to harken back to the comic books of the 90s. The name of my graphic novel is Scumdogs. It's a parody book. I parody cartoons we all know and love. Let's see. The name of the main characters are the Scumdogs. They're supervillains who are out to take over the world. See, in the future, the Scumdogs used to be pro athletes because in the future there was such a thing known as the Scumdog Sports. It's sporting events held with superhuman powerful monsters as athletes. They're called scum and dogs because, well, they're scum and dogs for trading their humanity for money. Mainly because they're competing to compete in these sports, you have to be superhumanly powerful, and you need, to do that, you basically transform yourself. So these guys transform themselves into monsters to compete for money and fame and fortune. So not exactly the nicest guys around. Because think of today's athletes, how jerky they are. Now give them superpowers, and now you get the idea. But what happens if these guys get banned from sports? Well, they decide to take over the world. They still call themselves scumdogs because, well, why not? Might as well call themselves that as they try to take over the world. And the main characters are Deathmug and Buick Starpoon. They're arch enemies. Deathmug is the purple guy with the metal mask, while Buick Starpoon is the guy with the pink pompadour hair. Deathmug is a parody of various villains from 80s cartoons. He's an arrogant, overblowing windbag who wants to rule the world and get back at it for basically banning him from sports. Well, he was a jerk, so he was just he's always a jerk, and well, since he got thrown out of sports, he's now just a jerk for now he's just a jerk professionally. Now he's just a jerk for life. You get the idea. Deathmug is he has, as I said, he has various attributes from various villains from 80s cartoons. If you notice him, he's got a metal mask, much like and he's got gold on him, much like Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe, who has a metal mask, like that, as well as Serpentor from G.I. Joe, who's got gold on him, and he's purple like the Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You get the idea here. He's got various aspects of villains and stuff. Well, his archenemy Buick Starpoon is basically a G.I. Joe parody, but he's also a parody of he's a parody of Duke from G.I. Joe, but he's also a parody of Buzz Lightyear and the kind of characters like space hero kind of characters like Buck Rogers or John Carter of Mars, or just or other kinds of characters like that. But mostly like Buck Rogers, you can hear in his name. Buick Starpoon, well, as you can see, he's a G.I. Joe parody and stuff like that, which means he's got a military specialty because all G.I. Joes have a military specialty, and so he's parodying that. His is that he's a captain in the Space Forces. But he's also, if you notice the uniform he's wearing, that's his uniform in the Space Forces. Anyone on this cover with a similar uniform to him, is part of his team in the Space Forces. Buick Starpoon is also, quite overblown and arrogant. Think of the classic military guy. He always thinks he's right, never thinks he's wrong, always overbearing to all of his underlings, and is basically a massive jerk. That's Buick Starpoon, but funny. Now, as I said, anyone on this cover, if you cover with a cover with a similar uniform to Buick Starpoon is part of his team. This guy over here with the mohawk, his name is Roadhog. He's another member of his team in the Space Forces. His military specialty is that he's an army guy. While this bald guy with a gun down here in the blue uniform, firing it off, the bald guy right here, his name is Beach Pounder. His military specialty is that he's another Marine. While this guy back here in the red uniform, in that vehicle he's driving, firing his weapons, his name is Blast Tank. His military specialty is that he's a heavy vehicle specialist, a tanker. Yeah, you get the idea there, if you notice. Get the idea here. All of them are kind of funny. You get the idea. They're all, well, Buick Starpoon leads his team against the Scum Dogs, and they fight and save the universe. All of them think Buick Starpoon is the greatest guy ever. They look up to their captain, even though he's an overblown, arrogant moron who wouldn't know how to lead his way off a paper sack. But you get the idea there, and you'll learn all about him when you read and back my graphic novel on Indiegogo. And stuff. Here's Girl Friday. Girl Friday is another member of the Wild Rangers. That's the name of Buick Starpoon's team in the Space Forces. Now, oh, by the way, my Indiegogo for Scumdogs isn't live yet. I'm just telling you, when it does go live, go and back it. And by the way, hit that like button for me. It helps me fight the algorithm so more people can see my content. Hit that bell as well, and make sure to hit the part that gives you all future notifications for my videos, as well as please share this video out on Twitter and Facebook. Now, Girl Friday here, she is another member of the Wild Rangers. She was put on the Wild Rangers as Buick Starpoon's second in command because while the Wild Rangers fight the Scumdogs and save the universe, they do it a lot. Well, they fight the Scumdogs and save the universe. They're just highly destructive idiots. Their idea of saving the world is basically burning it down so the Scumdogs can't take it. So you get the idea. The damage they're doing to the area is immense, and the lawsuits and litigation and lawsuits that the Space Forces are receiving from people is truly huge. So they put Girl Friday there as Buick Starpoon's second in command to basically babysit him. And she hates Buick Starpoon. She hates it because she thinks her career in the military is over because she's now a babysitter. Come and read about her in my Indiegogo. Come read about her and back the book when it goes live on Indiegogo. When Scumdogs goes live on Indiegogo. Now we'll look at Death Mug's henchmen, because in all 80s cartoons, the main villain of the show would have henchmen and they'd be total idiots. And these are my idiots. The blue guy with the top hat is Mirrormouth, and the pink guy down here is Sloppy. They're a couple of idiots that destroy everything in sight. They can't follow orders, and they're basically just they're a parody of every henchman from an 80s cartoon, so come and read about him. Here's Hair Metal Doctor. He's another member of the Scumdogs. He's a parody of Dr. Mindbender from G.I. Joe, a mad scientist. But my mad scientist here has been crossed over with a hair mill musician because I thought that'd be awesome to have as a villain. He thinks of all the mad gadgets and machines the Scumdogs use to try and take over the universe. Come and read about him when my Indiegogo goes live and back my book. Well, back my book and read all about him. And here we have Miss Breasty Melons. Miss Breasty Melons is basically a parody of the Baroness from G.I. Joe. But unlike the Baroness, she's a party girl. She only became a villain because she thought it'd be fun, and she's only doing this for the lols or just to have more fun. She's in no way is she anything more than you're basically than a complete idiot who thinks that being a villain is fun. Now, the Hair Metal Doctor pinup and the Miss Breasty Melons pinup will be included with other pinups in my graphic novel when you go back it. And stuff like that. Looks pretty good. Not too bad there. Let me exit out of these now. We looked at this while. We're going to be looking at weird stories tonight. Haunted houses, aliens, anything, cryptids. We'll be looking at anything I find rather strange tonight and having some fun. I have a plethora of stories we can look at. We could even finish up some others. Going to the United Kingdom. Let's see. Weird stories, paranormal stuff. Could look at some cryptids. What to look at first? The reality of devils and goblins and fairies. I think I read a bit of this the other day and didn't finish it. Only a bit of it. Let's get into this. Have you ever wondered where our undying... Well, should I also maybe look at Indiegogo real quick? And by the way, hit that like button for me if you have not, folks. It really helps me fight the algorithm. Let's take a real quick look at Indiegogo real quick. Alien Alamo has made $81,151. That's good. Other books are doing not bad. Look at these books, not doing too bad. Stomp has made $5,640. Let's go over here. Thunder Punch, Gunship Thunder Punch has been 20,709. This issue looks pretty good. Got a few days left. So that's also very good. Not too bad as we look at this. All right. Not doing too bad. Let's get back to this article where we're going to read. Have you ever wondered where our undying fascination with mythical beings, well, where does it come from? It's certainly an old notion, well beyond the familiar tales of medieval Europe, and while interest in the idea remains relatively high, belief in their existence seems to be waning, though that might just be, temporary hiccup. Yeah, that's a temporary hiccup. Much as believer in fairy folk, elves, dwarves, leprechauns, etc. may seem to you like simpletons holding on to ancient superstitions, you should first know that every myth contains at least a small kernel of truth. That doesn't mean that all claims of magical fairies are true. An accurate Sir Conan Arthur Doyle found out with his Cunningly Fairies instance, which of course turned out to be a complete hoax, though brilliantly executed when you consider the hoaxers were children. No, the truth isn't nearly as obvious as real fairies flittering about in sunlit forests. There may actually have been fairies and goblins, elves, though, of a sort. What we know about congenital deformity brought on through genetic mutation. Oh, going to blame it on deformed people, huh? Once thought was as magic trickery, evil. The same genetic conditions we see today, however rare, also existed in a time when people thought we were produced by homunculus, or even divine miracle. And it's the fact that some of these conditions were misinterpreted as evidence of the existence of these mythical beings are just a few examples. Sounds kind of boring here. There is a condition known as Williams syndrome, or Williams, WBS. It causes one of the strangest enhancements you'll ever see. The more common name for Williams syndrome is pixie people, and there's a very good reason for that. People who suffer from WBS tend to be thin, wispy people with facial features that cause them to look like superficially like what you think of as fairy folk. That's not the end of it, though. They also tend to have personality traits that cause them to behave in ways that would seem to support the idea that they are some kind of mythical being. Rest assured, though, they are not one of the defining symptoms. Is a tendency for those afflicted to be overly talkative, positive, and highly empathetic. In other words, they're often completely uninhibited, socially appearing almost unreasonably happy all the time. They also tend to display impressive verbal skills with large vocabularies, sometimes making them seem hyper-intelligent, though they tend to be score poorly on standard IQ tests. It's not all gumdrops and fairy dust, though. There are a host of detrimental symptoms as well, ranging from respiratory complications, neural problems like visual spatial confusion, and characteristic paranoia. The downside of their condition is often they are ill-equipped to live independently. Gonna read this? Nah, maybe I'll come back to it. Talking about how all this is just genetic and stuff like that. I kind of want to look at something a little more entertaining, maybe ghosts or something like that. We could look at that. Let's see. Rise of the Mutant. Magical and mysterious little folk of the United Kingdom. We could look at that. Bizarre cases of mysterious gnomes and little people. I could look at that as well. Tales of the little people in relatively recent times. When something gets into your scary accounts of people held under siege creatures. Yeah, I think I'll look at this one over here. Let's go look at something a little more entertaining, huh? Something that doesn't basically, yes, there's genetic conditions and all that stuff, and I guess I can come back to it. But I want to read something a little more entertaining. I'm pretty sure that let's get into this article with little people and relatively, tales of little people, huh? And what they have to say about them. I'm pretty sure that any discussion around the little people will provoke imagery of centuries-old creatures, goblins, brownies, fairies, goblins. There are, however, a significant number of reports of such creatures that originate in relatively recent times. I'll share with you today three intriguing examples. The first comes from authority Matthew Williams. Matt told me of a fascinating story of something very strange that happened to him at Knapp Hill, Wiltshire, England, in the summer of 1996 that I'll present without interruption. It goes as follows. I was sitting in a car about 9 o'clock at night and we suddenly saw the light that seemed to be coming from Adam's grave, 196 foot long, 19 foot high, borough with an ancient burial chamber at its southeast end, which is on Walker's Hill. I had all my equipment with me, cameras, night scopes, and binoculars, and so jumped out of the car and focused on Adam's grave. Bright moonlit night, and Walker's Hill was all lit up. Though the binoculars, I could see a chap on top holding what seemed to be a torch. I could tell he was wearing what looked like either a long dark coat, black cloak, so I then got out of my night vision equipment for a better look and could see he was walking back and forwards on Adam's grave. Well, I watched him for a few minutes and then went back to the car to get some food. Then about 10 minutes later, I thought I'd take a look again. When I looked up again, I could see that there was a group of figures standing in a circle around this man. What was stranger was that I could only make out their shape, but not their clothing. And as I watched, they began what looked like a dance, and as a ritual dance, like those of, like those you see of, people who do such things. But the weirdest thing was just that he just stood there, and it was like he couldn't even see them. Whatever these creatures were, they suddenly began to shrink in size, but the size of small children. They carried on doing that wild dance-like ceremony. What was odd was they seemed to glitter practically on their arms like little globes, light flickering. I thought, what the hell are they? So I packed up the equipment back in the car, edged my way towards Adam's grave, and hoped no one could see me, and then sprinted the last bit to surprise them and see what was going on. But then I got there, the figures were gone, and the chap was gone too. The moon lit up the whole area, but there was no one, nothing. I stood there for a while. I searched the whole area and then went to the car. Wasn't really much more I could do. There's another equally intriguing account that is connected to little humanoids and ceremonial dancing, as you'll now see. Thorner, Fairshire, England, had a close-up encounter with a group of little people in on Ho Island, an island in the Orkney Islands of the United Kingdom. Years after the incident occurred, Thorner contracted Marwick, who was the author of the book titled The Folklore of Orkney and Shetland, published in 1975. It's not clear if Thorner shared the account with anyone else. Marwick, at least, seemed significantly impressed by what Thorner had to say. It was 1943. The Second World War was still raging, and Thorne was stationed on the island of Hoy in Orkney, Scotland. His account of fascinating. One stormy night in winter, I was walking and struggling along the cliff top of Horness. The wind was high. Low-flying, swirling clouds. Part enveloped the land of misty rain. At times, the pressure was so great that I was forced to bend and clutch at the heather to retain a footing. On one such occasion, and looking up, I was amazed to see that I had the company of what appeared a dozen of more wild men dancing about to and fro. These creatures were small in stature, but they did not have long noses, nor did they appear kindly in demeanor. They possessed brown faces, shallow in complexion, with long, dark, bedraggled hair. As they danced about, seeming to throw themselves over the cliff edge, I felt I was witnessing some ritual dance of a tribe of primitive men. Difficult to describe it in a few words. My feelings at this juncture of my bewilderment. The whole sequence could have lasted for about 3 minutes until I was able to leave the cliff edge. One third and final story comes from Mac Thomas, who was of several books, including After the Martian Apocalypse, Cryptoterrestrials. Said in the later book, I have a reliable first-hand. Report of little people at large in the American Northwest. Source encountered a small congregation of these beings in a wooded area, human-like in all essential respects. The beings were nevertheless small, like normal people in miniature. Although the encounter was brief, my source was able to glean some important information. The little people claimed to predate North American cultures and possessed their own languages. In so many other accounts of meetings with UFO-nauts or paranormal entities, they appeared Asian? Maybe they appeared, inviting speculation that they originate from a lost community that was opted for a peripheral role, effectively hidden from the world. Maybe. All right, we looked at that. That was entertaining. Let's go over here now. look at some more weird stories. Scary accounts of people held under siege, huh? Well, scary accounts by mysterious creatures. So basically being attacked by monsters, huh? Well, let's read this story and find out. Right? Although cryptid, alien, various other strange encounters with mysterious creatures have long been going on throughout history, there are a few of those that stand out as particularly odd and harrowing. There have over the years been some cases in which something very aggressive and insidious has stepped out from the realms of the unknown to go marauding about and terrorize the unsuspecting. These are the cases in which regular citizens were allegedly visited by malevolent forces they cannot understand, to be menaced and held under siege by entities which we still cannot explain. Well, still cannot. In an earlier report of something from beyond our understanding, stepping forward from the shadows of run amok, it occurred in 1891. The U.S. state of New York seems to have begun in the area of Gravesend Beach, where residents began to report of being frightened by a strange creature roaming about the woods, which was described as being a monster all covered with hair, with frailing red whiskers and a satanic howl, which did not seem to be any known creature of this earth. The monster was purportedly had more than seen unearthly wails stirring the quiet of the night until it got to the point that terrified locals were refused to leave their homes. After the sun went down, there would supposedly even be reports of the beast lumbering about houses. By the way, folks, hit that like button for me because it helps me fight the algorithm, as well as please go hit that bell and make sure to hit the part that gives you all feature notifications, as well as please share this video on social media, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook. And let's get back to this. And sniffing at the doors and windows. The locals called the red-whiskered devil, and it was causing mass hysteria at the time. In the meantime, whatever it was seemed to extend its range, beginning to show up near the town of Unionville, as well as where one particularly harrowing report came from a train dispatcher who claimed it had a roar like a thunder. The creature apparently shambled out of the dark to flash an evil grin at him, after which the man grabbed a monkey wrench and chased after it. He would say that he followed it through the woods for several miles, after which he suddenly turned to him and vanished in thin air right before his eyes. The red-whiskered devil would be spied and heard throughout the area, after that keeping people cowering in their homes at night, before one day just suddenly disappearing, leaving us to wonder what on earth it could have possibly been. At the time, there was talk that it was merely a misidentified bear or someone playing a prank, but it has never been solved and remains an obscure historical oddity. That's odd. It does sound like something. It does sound like someone who was doing something, doesn't it? But it does sound like the way he described it sounds very much the way people have seen Bigfoot or other weird creatures in the woods, how it just suddenly disappeared in front of his eyes. Could it be something like a fairy or skinwalker having fun with this guy because it just disappeared in front of him? Could very well be. Could be that this guy just was basically being led around and then just had being screwed up, then screwed with before the creature got bored and left. Let's get going onwards, shall we, folks? And let me go over here to see if we have any more likes. Well, another historical oddity, as we get back to this, just as perplexing from an even earlier in time, comes to us from 18th century in another country, in the little wilds of Mount Bindai, an active state. A volcano located in the Tohoku area of Fukushima Prefecture, late 1700s. A remote rural village at the foot of the mountain would become the haunt of some sort of mysterious beast that seems to have appeared out of nowhere to sow terror. Vanish just as suddenly. The incident began when villagers started reporting signs of a strange creature lurking in wilderness along the fringes of town. The creature was said to look like a large primate of some sort, with huge mouth of claws and spiky fur along its back. It was most often fleetingly glimpsed in the evening and twilight hours. Its eyes were said to glow or reflect like a cat's. The beast was said to furtively stalk around the edges of town and seem to shun light Villagers described how the thing would sit in pools of shadow just outside the radius of a light source and glower from the darkness with its flickering shiny eyes. Despite its menacing appearance, at first the creature was easily frightened and would dart away into the underbrush from sudden light shouting over loud noises, and it became increasingly bolder and more frequently sputtered as the days went by. The strange monster was not only seen but also heard. Loud, guttural, and clearly inhuman shrieks and howls were often heard at night, emanating from somewhere on the dark mountain, looming above at times with this eerie nightmare howling would last throughout the night, keeping the villagers awake in the grip of terror. The unnatural shrieks, howls, and sightings of such a sinister creature would have likely been enough to instill fear within such a small and remote rural community, but this was to be just the beginning of the village's nightmare. The creature became even bolder and more aggressive as the days went by. Where at first it would retreat from noise or light, it started to display more menacing behavior, such as growling at eyewitnesses. Villagers also reported being followed by the thing, which made less and less effort to conceal itself as it stalked them along darkened paths. The villagers placed guards with torches around the outskirts of town in an effort to drive away the creature, or at least discourage it from coming nearer. But it was not, coming nearer, but it was not intimidated. Their plan did nothing to dissuade it. The plan did nothing to dissuade it, and perhaps even angered it. Several nights watchmen described being rushed from the darkness by the creature and retreating from their positions in terror, adding to this intense situation were reports that numerous livestock animals were turning up dead and mangled as if by some powerful predator. And there were also many claims that animals were just disappearing without a trace, suspected to have also been victims of whatever was menacing them. One farmer claimed to have spotted the mysterious creature killing a dog in a field. According to the man's account, the thing had already slain the animal and was in the process of disemboweling it when it was spotted and subsequently dragged its mutilated prey into the trees. All right. People became wary of traveling outside during twilight hours and at night, yet even staying in their homes was no guarantee of peace. The creature was often reported of circling homes. Its deep, gruff breathing was frequently heard right outside of dwellings. Occasionally would rap, scratch at, or even pound at doors, windows, and walls, almost as if it were testing the structure for ways to enter it as the terrified occupants cowered in their homes. It was also not uncommon for people to hear the thumping of its heavy footsteps across the roofs. One particularly harrowing account comes from a family of farmers on the very outskirts of town who had their home actively attacked by the rampaging beast. In this case, the creature was said to have charged the doors full force, were roaring in rage, and the doors rattled in their frames, threatening to cave in. The furious monster also was reported as hurling large stones at the dwelling when it failed to gain entry. The beast slunk back into the woods, leaving the house. Sounds very much like a Bigfoot. I mean, honestly, it sounds like a Bigfoot with the rock throwing. Could very well have been one. This sounds very similar to it. The house. Let's see. Get back to this. Leaving the house badly damaged, and the potential occupants and the petrified occupants, no doubt, scared for life. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. I imagine. Oh, that's bad. Let me read that again. Leaving the house badly damaged and the petrified occupants, no doubt, scared for life. Oh, that sounds bad. Most certainly does sound bad if that were to happen to you, huh? I could read it in another way, too. Leaving the house badly damaged. Okay, just the house badly banged up, and the scared occupants, no doubt, scared for life. Okay, that came up fine. As time went on, several children disappeared. Some reportedly taken directly from their own homes. The creature was even purportedly seen kidnapping children and dragging them screaming into the night as helpless villagers looked on in horror. Attacks on adults began to occur as well, and although the creature was not successful in killing any of them, some villagers were bitten, mauled, or at the very least left badly shaken. One village man described how the creature came so close to him during an attack that he could smell its breath, which was described as smelling as rotten eggs and fish. He was only able to escape after allegedly poking the thing in its eyes. The This was enough to prompt the hunt for the beast, with the village hiring a famous hunter to get the job done. After a few days of tracking the creature, the hunter allegedly finally managed to shoot and kill it in 1782, after it tried to rush the forest and attack him. It was reported to be so fierce that the bullet did not bring it down, and the hunter had to resort to repeatedly stabbing and thrashing the beast with a knife to kill it. The hunter then dragged the body back to the village to display it to the shocked villagers. The carcass was reportedly a somewhat ape-like creature that was 1.5 meters tall, covered in hair, with a large mouth filled with fangs. It was so oversized that it was described as beings if the head was split from ear to ear. Along with its backward spines were mixed with those of a porcupine. The creature also had a long, sharp nose and short limbs with webbed hands that ended in wicked claws. The carcass was reported to extrude an extremely rank. The carcass was reported to extrude an extremely rank odor, which unfortunately led to the body being discarded not long after. With the death of this baffling monster, the signs of attacks, kidnappings, animals, disappearance all ceased. What was the beast of Bendai, and what did it want? We will probably never know, and it is a very obscure story in Japan. Far from well known is a case from the 1950s which originates from the remote rural wilds of Christian country, Kentucky. The Sutton family owned a rural farmhouse tucked away off Old Mansville Road near the town of Hopkinsville. Hopkinsville again. Jeez, is that the same Hopkinsville as this Hopkinsville Goblins? This might actually be the same story. Well, we'll reread it here again, stuff. But it's come out in other places as well. What is with this place? With no neighbors and woodland skirting all about the property, and no phone service in the home, it was a pretty remote area to live at. Just out alone there in the dark, it was on the evening of August 21st, 55, that a visiting friend of the family, Billy Ray Tyler, went out to get some water from the well when he observed multicolored streaking light come down out of the sky. It seemingly landed a gully within some nearby trees while spraying sparks off of it. The Tyler ran back to the house and told his son, soon after which the dog began barking uncontrollably. This would be the beginning of a terrifying ordeal that has remained discussed to this day. The family and Tyler gathered around and peered into the dark to see something approaching out of the gloom. At first just a faint bubbling light, but which came closer to congeal into a rather startling sight. Yeah, it's these guys again. Ooh. The Hopkinsville Goblins. But then again, Hopkinsville has also turned up in other scary stories as well, not just with the Hopkinsville Goblins, so very strange. Three hovering in the air. They're hovering in the air. There was a small glowing humanoid figure around 3 feet in height, wearing a metallic suit of some sort. It was described as having greenish skin, bulging eyes, and an oversized bald head, with bat-like ears and a large lipless mouth that stretched between them. The body was thin, and its arms were long, tapered, and spear-like tipped and with what looked like talons. It did not in any way look friendly, and scared out of their wits, the father picked up a shotgun and blasted away at the little beast. Although he thought he had hit it, the creature merely flipped over and retreated in the murky shadows. There were a few beats of silence, and then one more of the creatures showed up, getting close enough to the house to peer in through the windows at the family. Again, the shotgun was used, shooting one of the creatures at a window point blank, smashing the glass all over the place, but seemingly to do no damage. The monster, which scurried off back into the night. Curious as to whether they had hurt the thing or not, Tyler and his Sutton family, John Shirley Sutton, really kept outside, guns at the ready, and took a furtive glance around. At first there was nothing, but then Tyler let out a scream as a clawed hand reportedly reached down from the eave of the back door and grabbed at his head, managing to gain a fistful of hair. Sutton dragged his friend back inside and slammed the door. The old Sutton son, a 24-year-old Lucky Sutton, then opened the door to take a pot shot at the roof with a shotgun, after which the creature floated down to the ground, apparently unhurt, and scampered off. It would seem as though these unearthly beasts had brought friends with them, because according to the family's account, more of them would begin to appear from the trees, until an estimated 10 to 15 of them were circling the property at the scared family, gathered every firearm they could, and sporadically shot at them when they were close enough. For the most part, the bullets whizzed out into the murk, either failed to hit their mark or were ineffectual, with a few that did hit, occasionally letting out metallic pings like a coin hitting a metal bucket, as if the creatures were made of steel. All of this happened again drop of a faint green haze glowing from somewhere in the distance, perhaps its location where the spaceship had gone down the gully. This battle, well, went on for a full 3 hours until during one lull in activity, the family dared to venture outside to pile up into the car and speed off towards the sun. Skeptical police were then brought to the property, but there were no signs of the goblins. The family was ranting about. The police left without incident, and the family returned to their homes. But soon after, a second attack would occur. Second attack, huh? Glowing faces began to bloom out of the darkness once again, much to their horror. Once again, the bizarre beasts came at the farmhouse, floating about, popping up to peer into the windows and scurrying around on the roof as the family once again opened fire, and this went on until dawn, when whatever the strange intruders were stalked off, and this time, intruders were stalked off, and this time did not return. From the very following day, the dramatic spooky encounter was splashed over the newspapers. Let's see. All over the area, fanning out to becoming national news as reporters and the curious converged upon the farm. The curious converged, huh? Okay, folks, it's very interesting. And once again, I have to ask, what did these people see? Was it actually goblins, or did they actually see aliens? Because it does sound like they encountered the Greys. It also sounds like these creatures were quite a bit different as well. Let's see. Fanning out to become, outwards and stuff. Following day was out to become national news as reporters and the curious converged upon the farm, faced with reporters and monsters camping out on their property, hoping to see the creatures for themselves, and the relentless, never-ending media attention focused on them. The family sold their farm and moved off. Whatever happened out there at that secluded farmhouse has never been accurately explained, and the tale of Hopkinsville goblins remains one of the more spectacular dramatic cases of people under siege by strange creatures. Moving up to later years, we come to another very odd case, something from beyond terrors and scared residents in this case. The terror would come to the small community of Enfield, Illinois, located in the southwest corner of the state. It was normally a secluded, quiet community where nothing much really happened. By the evening of April 25th, 1973, all of this would change, when a bizarre beast would come calling to leave a trail of bafflement and mystery in its wake. The thing was first spotted by 10-year-old Greg Garrett as he was out playing in the backyard with his rural home, and as his parents watched TV inside, the boy would claim that as he had been playing, a hideous nightmarish beast had emerged from the night, described as being around 5 feet tall, with 3 legs, short, stumpy arms, tipped with taloned hands, gray skin, covered with slime, and disproportionately large red eyes. The monster had supposedly lurched toward him to stomp on the boy's feet, ripping his shoes with its claws in the process before he had retreated to his house in terror. Police who arrived at the scene could find no trace of the entity the boy had described, although the very upset witness was considerably terrified and insisted that it had been real. Nevertheless, it was mostly written off as a young boy's wild imagination. No one thought much of it at the time. Garrett would be somewhat vindicated when a mere half an hour later the creature would make another appearance, this time in the yard. The Garrett's neighbor, Henry McDaniel, had started when McDaniel's children claimed to hear something scratching at the outside of the house, and when he went to investigate, he heard it too, the odd scratching noise. McDaniel at first thought it must have been some sort of animal. Yeah, isn't this something that's demon and stuff? Some sort of animal, perhaps a stray dog or cat, and he went out to confront whatever it was. When he opened the door, he saw it was no dog. There was looming on the front porch was a bizarre monstrosity, which would prove exactly what the description of what little Greg Garrett had just heard an hour before. McDaniel would later describe the authorities thusly. It had 3 legs, a short body, 2 large short arms coming out of its breast area, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. It stood 4.5 feet tall and was grayish colored. It was also trying to get into the house. The beast continued to circle the house. Yeah, we've heard this before, but we're reading a different version of it. Scratching away at the walls and doors and hissing like a wildcat. I think if I go back over here, I can find the Enfield Monster incident. We were talking about the Enfield Monster again. Not too bad. The beast, that isn't like, and thinking enough for McDaniel, grabbed his hunting rifle and shoot at it. Close range, to shoot at it close range. According to him, hitting it dead on, it then reportedly leapt away at a frantic rate and allegedly covered in 5 feet and 3 spectacular leaps before disappearing into the darkness. The terrifying man called the police, claiming to have seen a monster from outer space. And when authorities searched the area, they discovered a series of footprints that, the very men called the police claimed to have seen a monster from outer space, and when authorities searched the area, they discovered a series of footprints that measured 4 inches across and looked like those of a dog, only with 6 toe pads, and rather than the usual 4, and seeming to be of something with large 3 legs based on the layout. The fact that no wooden footprint was smaller than the rest, they also found that some curious scratch marks on the outside of the house that corroborated the story of some creature trying to get in. Yet, despite these findings, authorities were skeptical of McDaniel's spectacular claims. The creature would reportedly come back to McDonald's house, again this time simply wandering about at some nearby railway tracks. As the witness stared with a mixture of awe, wonder, and fear, it was McDaniel's report that would really launch the mysterious creature into the spotlight, and soon newspapers were calling it the Enfield Horror. The publicity at it, though many of these visitors were merely curiosity seekers hoping to see the monster, for themselves, others were more ambitious monster hunters who came armed to the teeth and dead set on to actually bring whatever the creature was down. This alarmed the locals as the last thing they wanted in their previously quiet community, with a bunch of trigger-happy thrill seekers out in the woods with loaded guns and alcohol. Indeed, there were several incidents of trigger-happy hunters blasting away at what they thought was the mystery monster, and many of them claimed to have actually seen it, such as 2 hunters named Mike Muggle and Roger, seeing it, and such as 2 hunters named who said they had encountered a giant gray monkey for hunting in violations and a threat to public safety. After which they opened fire in unison, or whatever they would claim, whatever. Let me get photos for Wheeler claimed that it had been a gray-haired creature they had spotted in the woods. The hunters even claimed to have had hit it, but their bullets had no effect whatsoever. But just a posse of gun-toting thrill seekers out drinking and raising hell. Let's get into this again. The Enfield Horror was causing quite a lot of chaos with the creature itself and the out-of-control hunters, both serving to keep locals scared out of their wits. And it would continue to be cited. The first major sighting of the Enfield Horror was made by a group of 4 men searching the area, with one of them being Rick Rainbow, the news director of radio station WWKI, in Indiana. The group claimed that they had seen a gray stooped over ape. They've seen a gray stooped over ape-like creature. Let me read that again. The group claimed they have seen a gray stooped over ape-like creature lopping through the woods near an abandoned house, not from McDaniel's property. The mysterious thing was reported to have been moving at a speed far faster than a man could run, and finally disappeared into the forest. On this occasion, the strange creature was said to have let a blood-curdling wail, which Rainbow claimed to have actually recorded on tape. After this account just sort of stopped the creature just disappearing to leave bafflement in its wake. The Enfield Horror is one of those creatures isolated to just one area, and a few accounts are so completely outlandish that it would be hard to figure out what we were dealing with. Here, theories include that it was a cryptid or an alien of some sort, and an escaped mutated military experiment, an interdimensional interloper or demon, or merely a misidentified animal, out of place exotic animals, or hoax, all fueled by panic and mass hysteria. And in of these cases, we have looked at cases that seem to be beyond reason with normal everyone everyday people instantly becoming themselves, thrust into the domain of things, of these things. What does the draw these enemies do to these places to torment those who dwelled there? What did they want? Where did they come from? And where did they go? We will perhaps never know. In cases such as these, remain startling enigmas that float about the property. If the more truly bizarre cases of creatures run amok. Okay, very interesting there. Let's see. Right, 44 minutes in. Okay. Too bad. Let's go look at some more interesting stories. Bizarre cases of attacks from gnomes and little people. Okay, why not look at this? There are many reports of gnomes, goblins, and various other mysterious little monsters from around the world, usually confined to the pages of fiction. There seems to be many cases of people actually spying and interacting with such entities. Even spookier still are these cases in which these seemingly magical, impossible beings turn against us, display very malevolent, sinister behavior, while already a very surreal, far from and corner of the paranormal gnomes and little people reports get more unsettling when these creatures are out for blood. Here is a selection of such weird reports of gnomes attacking human beings. A really bizarre report appeared in the Phantoms and Monsters and comes from the Navajo, from the Reservation, Arizona, in the United States. Here, the witness said he gathered on this day at their great-grandmother's house with her family in order to celebrate her mother's birthday, a house that she described as being out in the middle of nowhere. It was mostly a joyous occasion, but according to the witness, at 10:30 p.m., the dogs began barking and howling uncontrollably outside, but looking out into the pitch blackness of night, they could see what was upsetting the animals so much. The witness stepped out onto the front porch. Says one could hear the dogs running around out of sight, snarling, as if they were chasing something. But even with the front light and this little on this did little to chase away the utter darkness out past the porch. As she stood in her globe of light on the porch, something then did bloom in the night to come into view. It wasn't. Yeah, very strange there, huh? Ooh, boy. I can say that. What did this woman encounter? The witness stepped out at the front porch so she could hear the dogs running around, snarling. But even at the front light, the little chase away the darkness, but out past the porch. As she stood in her globe of light on the porch, something then did bloom out in the night to come into view. But it wasn't dogs, she says, of the harrowing encounter that would follow. Then suddenly something jumped from the tree into the side of my grandmother's house and started crawling like Spider-Man all around the house. It was hard to make out, but it looked like a small man crawling like a lizard. The house was made of stucco, but it moved around easily. This thing was far too fast. The dogs were going nuts. I ran into the house screaming. Everyone was terrified. I remember crawling underneath my bed. The noises were horrible. It sounded like there was more than one. I heard some squeaking sounds that got real loud at times. They would jump on top of the roof and could be heard walking around. I don't remember how long it lasted. I was under the bed the entire night. When dawn came, we all went outside to check out the house. There were a few bits of stucco knocked off, but not as bad as there were a few bits of stucco knocked off, but not as bad as I thought it would be. The dogs were in their tool shed and too tired to move. Then my uncle got a ladder, so he had climbed into the roof. What we saw was really shocking. There were hundreds of white handprints going around the right flat roof, right on to the edge. The handprints were small in size, but were human. It looked like the hands had been dipped in white paint. I looked very closely, but it wasn't paint. It was almost like it's thick chalk. Okay, that's very strange. Okay, so I'm trying to think of something here. This sounds very much like the Devil's Footprint. There was a story about this weird footprint that was shaped like a goat, like a boot. I think it was a goat. There was like this goat print, and basically it would every few feet there would be another goat print, and it would go in a straight line over houses and stuff like that, through fields and stuff like that, and people followed it till it just stopped. This sounds very much like it with these handprints. Her uncle said in a hushed voice to mention what had happened to anyone because he believed the creatures were a kind of shape-shifting spirit called skinwalkers, and that to talk of them would only bring the family strife. According to him, the family had been cursed by the tribal elders long ago during the old days before the trees. After one of their ancestors had been outed as a witch, she decided to keep this dark piece of her family's history to herself, and it was at the last time that she ever went to stay at her grandfather's house. Another weird report was written on the site. Malcolm's Musings is told by a witness who says she had her surreal experience back in 1984 as the Gold Coast, in Queensland, Australia. She had just returned from a trip to New Zealand for a seminar. So although she lived with their 2 children, they were staying at a friend's house for the night, leaving her alone in the house. She was very tired from her flight from the trip, so she went to bed and says she passed out from exhaustion, where sleep wouldn't last. She explains. Next I knew, I could hear the sound of several voices. They were argumentative voices, seemed to be telling each other to hurry, hurry. I managed to lift my hand and look down to the source of the voices. There were several small people. They were trying to pull me from my bed. Feet first and into the wardrobe. The wardrobe was only half a meter apex from the foot of the bed. I saw that the left-hand side of the wardrobe was open. The wardrobe had 2 sliding doors. I'd hung the clothes in the right-hand side, which had required that both wardrobe doors to be pushed to the left, and now the little people were trying to pull me into the left-hand side, which would have required someone to push both doors to the right. I should explain here that during the event, I must have been operating similar to a video camera in that I saw and heard only, and what I heard must have been committed to memory at the time. However, I did not experience normal thought process, so what I remembered afterwards and now is the product of my mental video camera. At the time, it did not dawn on me that the doors had been moved. I simply saw several small people trying to pull me from the bed and into the open half of the wardrobe. I experienced no shock or alarm, so I told myself I had lots of time to continue sleeping because I was far too big and heavy for them to move very far. Now I'm of the opinion that those thoughts were not my own, were in some way suggested to me. Whatever the case, I must have lost consciousness again, because next thing I can remember is waking up to find several people crowded around me. They didn't speak as far as I know. I was now lying with my head at the front of the bed, so my feet must have been at the head of the bed. Again, I was similar to a video camera. I have a very clear memory of how the people appeared. They were males and females. Can't remember how many, but I can't remember how many, but at least 6, possibly more. One a male, one was larger than the others, and appeared to be either a leader. He was closer to me at the front first. He stared in my eyes with both of his eyes. Then there's a blink and his position had changed, and he was looking at me with only one of his eyes. Something happened there, but I still can't remember. I suspect he was imparting something to me. These creatures were described as around 2 feet tall, looking like a typical gnomes from storybooks and stuff like that, wearing what seemed to be winter clothes with leather skin. She says of their appearance, based on the height of the bed, the height was perhaps 2 to 2.5 feet tall. They were overdressed. Their clothing was suited to a much colder climate. I can remember it in considerable detail, possibly because in those days I did a lot of home sewing. They were Caucasian. Their skin looked weathered, as if they worked outdoors a lot. Their skin had a muddy cast. They had strong facial bones, wide cheekbones, wide jaws, strong chins and noses. Eyes and mouths were long, horizontal, but vertically narrow. What seemed recessed between the strong facial bones, best way to describe their faces is squished, as if heavy weight had been placed on the top of their heads, squishing them downward. Their bodies were stout, with deep chest, broad wrists, strong shoulders. She couldn't see the feet. She couldn't see the bottom half too well. She says he lost consciousness and woke up again to see the creatures were still there and there were more of them. This time, although she still didn't feel any sense of fear or panic, this changed when they began to pull at her leg again, this time talking and chattering amongst themselves rather excitedly in their alien language as they did so. The witness continues. Next, I was aware of this voice again as before, Curlews talking over the top of each other and urging each other to hurry, hurry. I raised my head to my alarm, saw that they almost succeeded in pulling my legs from the bed. My body was now right up to the bed again, with my head at the head of the bed and my feet near the wardrobe. When I saw they'd almost pulled out all of my legs from the bed, a surge of adrenaline shot through me, and I grasped that it wouldn't be much longer before gravity did the rest of their job for them. All they'd have to do would be to steer my falling body into the wardrobe. I yelled out and kicked at them. Then I jumped from the bed and into the center of the room. The room seemed to be far brighter than usual. I remember standing there and yelling at them. I still wasn't afraid. I was angry with them. They muttered between themselves. They sounded resigned, bitter. They filled into the open half of the wardrobe. They seemed to go in and then down as if falling down a ramp inside the wardrobe. When the strange beings were finally gone, she says that she was suddenly overcome with sheer terror, the like she had never felt before, as if the creatures had been using some power to keep her calm during the ordeal. Now its effects had worn off. This case sounds almost like it could have been a particularly bizarre alien abduction report, and that it was what the witness seems to think it might be. What was going on here? Were these gnomes like something from a fairy tale? Aliens? Just the imaginary of a retired mind causing vivid night terrors? From a respected researcher of UFO humanoid encounters? We have a slew of similar reports from the country of Argentina. Long signs of little people, locals called these Dundies, are very often described as quite bold and aggressive, and that definitely is the case with the reports that we look at here when all occurred. Maybe I should read these, or maybe I shouldn't. Been at this a while. We can always look at more of these stories later on. I mean, what time is it now? 55 minutes. I mean, how much more do we have of this? Not that much more. But we've been at this a while. I could have saved these stories for another time, like other stuff, and pick them up tomorrow. That's been a pretty good thing. We're looking at weird stories people have experienced, fairies and stuff like that, or ghosts, or maybe even aliens. Sounds very good what we've been looking at, huh? What do you think this girl actually saw? Were these guys actually aliens or what? They sound like they could be anything. They could have even been ghosts. I mean, some weird variant of ghost as well. But what could they actually have been, huh, folks? What do you think? Leave me a few comments. I'd love to hear from you guys and your opinions of this. Or leave me a few chats. Make sure I don't have any chats going on here. But hey. But either way, maybe I should end this live stream. We had some fun tonight, huh? And tomorrow, tomorrow is another night as well. Remember, folks, please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read Comics, They're Bad for You, okay? The there is misspelled. It's T-H-E-R-E. Make sure you're still subscribed. Hit that like button. It helps me fight the... hit that like button, as well as hit that bell, as well as hit the bell, part of the bell that gives you all future notifications for future videos, as well as please hit that like. Please share this video out on Twitter and Facebook. All right. Then leave some comments down below, as well as please go over and subscribe to Stitch Together Picks. Stitch Together Picks is a YouTube channel with a great host. You're going to love his reviews of movies. Stitch Together Picks does this great show. He does with his reviews being very good. So go and subscribe to Stitch Together Picks, as well as go over to Creepy Little Book. It's like the Art Bell radio show. He releases small videos talking about high strangers, but he also does live streams every night. On weekdays, he live streams at 12:30 a.m. and on weekends, he live streams at 10 o'clock p.m. Be sure to go into. He talks about aliens and ghosts, and you learn so much from his live streams. They are great. Be sure to go and subscribe to Creepy Little Book, as well as please go over and subscribe to my Rumble channel on rumble.com. Go over there, search out Comic Freak, and go and subscribe to my channel, as well as go over to BitChute and subscribe to my BitChute channel. Just go over to BitChute, search out Comic Freak as well, and subscribe to my channel. All right. Anything else? Yeah. Let me go over here. Yeah. Also, while we have a few more, about a minute left with this live stream. Yeah. We had some fun tonight, huh? A lot of fun. Remember, folks, I'll be back again tomorrow around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 8 or 10 for another live stream. So, yeah, come back tomorrow. And maybe we'll finish this off or look at some more stories, at some more aliens or ghosts or fairies or anything, or ultra terrestrials, and have some more fun. But either way, we had a good night. We looked at strange and creepy stories, even more unusual stories, and had some fun there. So that was good. I didn't feel like finishing off that article, stuff like that. We already looked a bit of them and we came to this, but we had some fun. We looked at these stories with these people having to deal with these small creatures. Sound very weird, don't they, folks? Well, either way, I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me.